today's webinar is part of the Tech Tuesday web series that has been recently launched as part of Success Portal. So Success Portal was launched towards the end of 2019, and it's actually a micro-learning platform for our customers. And we provide unlimited free learning paths, free trainings as part of this platform. So it really helps you use our products, understand the best practices, the architecture, and it's actually divided based on the beginner, advanced, intermediate level of expertise. So please do explore the learning paths. There is no restriction on the number of users. All registered users can go and access it. Along with that, our support contacts, they will also see an Informatica concierge, which is essentially your support offerings, who is the CSM assigned to you, as well as, the Ask an Expert sessions, the technical sessions that you can have with our experts. So how many are available for the month? That all will be visible for you. As well as, we have the customized, tailored content in terms of recommendations, in terms of training content and all, and also onboarding experience, we've simplified it. And finally, we have a chatbot coming out, especially for our cloud customers. So that will be available on Success Portal to help you, explore our product further and resolve any queries. So with that, I hand over to Raghavendra. I guess, he should be there now. Raghavendra, you there?
Yes, Neha, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah. So you can start sharing now. Yes. Yep. Thank you.
Yep. Can you please confirm, or one of you confirm if my screen is visible?
Yes. Can you just go ahead with the presentation mode?
Okay.
Yeah, you can jump to slide 4. I've covered the others already.
Okay. So the agenda for today is going to be partitions, performance tuning as overview, and within that, partition is one type of performance tuning, and pushdown optimization. And if time permits, the bonus topic would be data transformation manager and associated configurations that we would need to do. Let's jump in. First topic was going to be partitions, the overview. Partitions basically enable us to optimize mapping tasks. This is specifically for mapping tasks to reduce execution time by increasing the number of partitions under our pipelines so that the data processing itself happens in parallel. And this is more suited for tasks which process large data sets or have a lot of complexity in their mappings and so forth, which take a lot of time. And having multiple partitions will divide those tasks into and then processes those partitions concurrently, thereby reducing the job runtime. Enabling of the partition is configured at the source level. In source partitions, I will show you in the demo later on. In the source transformation, there is a tab called partitions. You can increase it throughout the mapping. Types of partitioning, 2 types. One is key range. This is more suitable for relational sources. The second type is the number of partitions, which is anything other than relational sources and or where key range is not suitable or not compatible with it. So delving deep into key range partitioning, this method distributes the rows based on a given field and the ranges that you define for each of those partition keys. Key ranges are dependent on number, string, and datetime format. If it is datetime format, for the format is mentioned in the, and you have to use the format that is mentioned default. Number to note is decimals not included, so it has to be an integer value. So where there are multiple sources, you have to use the same number of key ranges for each of those sources. This is an example wherein, let's say you have an account table which contains postal code and you want to partition by postal code, and this is how we can do it. The first partition, the minimum value need not be mentioned, and then the divisions need to be mentioned. Likewise, the maximum value is left blank. Partitions tab on the source transformation. This screenshot is for reference and how it looks like. Moving on, the second partition type that we have is basically you can specify the number of partitions that you would want a given source to be processed in. This is applicable to any source type that doesn't allow key range partitioning or any particular transformations which preclude the usage of key range partitioning. This can be used. And you can use up to 64 partitions. We have to consider the number of records, obviously, that needs to be processed in each of these partitions to make in the mapping, to process in the mapping. The same condition of multiple sources with multiple partitions, same number of partitions applies for number of partitions as well. This is one example. Let's say you have a flat file of 1 GB and you want to do it in a parallel way or read it in a parallel concurrently. You can divide it into 2, 4, or likewise, it will divide it equally or equal distribution basically. Right. Some of the restrictions on partitions are we cannot use it in parameterized source or where we have specified a source query instead of a single object. The second one is where the web services are there or hierarchy parser transformations are there. Within a mapping, we cannot use partitions at the moment. When mapping, this third restriction is slightly same as the first one, wherein we define custom relationships or advanced relationships when we add the related objects by choosing a multiple objects in the source definition. So that's what this pertains to. And this also we cannot use partitioning in these circumstances. Rules and guidelines, obvious or goes without saying that if the data set is very small, partitioning can actually be a hindrance or an overhead in terms of processing time. So this is most suitable for large source files or large data sets, right? And the second thing is we need to consider caching of the sequence generator. That way, the sequence numbers that are generated using normalizer and sequence generator transformations, they are to an extent sequential, but they are, however, unique, right? Sorter transformations do sort data within a partition separately. So if you have two partitions, both of them sort in a different way or indistinct with one another. The best practice of sorter before an aggregator or a joiner applies here also. Parameters cannot be used with key range values. That's another restriction. This is partitions end of topic. So we can do a quick demo for this. Can one of you confirm if my Informatica Cloud is visible for everyone?
Yes, it is.
It is. Okay, good. So in this demo, we will see key range partitioning, how and where it can be done, as well as the number of partitions. This is a simple mapping wherein the source database is SQL Server, and I'm using a flat file which gets generated on the fly. And down below, we can see the partitioning. And I have chosen partitioning key here, postal code, and defined the ranges as we wanted. And this will be converted into from single pipeline to 3 pipelines, each pipeline processing this particular range of records from this. So that's about key range partitioning. The second one is flat file partitioning, or the number of partitions being specified. So here in this mapping, I'm loading from flat file to Oracle table again. So no custom relationships are added. It's just single object. And I've specified the number of partitions here as 2. You can do this incrementally as opposed to coming down from a higher number of partitions. you would have to go through from lower number, and when the performance is satisfactory, you can stop it at there. Okay. Let me switch back to PPT. Back to PowerPoint presentation again. The next topic, push down optimization. Push down optimization. No, share the entire screen. Okay, so we can use push down optimization where we want to push the transformation logic to either source database or a target database for execution, and this logic gets converted into a SQL query in the way that the databases can understand. So the amount of transformation logic depends on that we can push into the database, depends on the type of the database, the transformation logic, and the task configuration that we have set up. At a high level, we have about 3 types of push-down optimizations. Source push-down optimization. Here, the mapping task analyzes the mapping from left to right, in the sense from source to target, until it reaches the transformation logic where it cannot push, or it determines where it cannot push to the source database. This task generates the select query based on the logic defined, or based on the logic that we have designed for each of those transformations, and decides how much it can push to the database. This reads results of select query and then processes the remaining pipeline or the remaining transformations as designed. The second PDO type is the target push-down optimization. Here, the analysis is done from target to source, or right to left in your mapping. And again, it stops where it cannot push anymore to the target database. The difference between source and target is there is a select statement that gets generated. Here, based on your update strategy in the mapping task, it will generate insert, update, and delete statements, and then it would push that transformation logic over to the target database. Right. The third one is full push-down optimization. Again, the analysis is done from source to target until it reaches a point where it cannot do the push anymore. Here, it generates the SQL statements against source and/or target, depending on the active connections. We will come to it in the later slide. And this is more applicable to when both source and target databases are within the same RDBMS system. That way, you can push it completely, as opposed to having to maintain different connections, so forth. This cross-schema push-down optimization is another feature. This is enabled by default, provided you have the licensing for it. This enables both the optimization for source and target objects in different schemas, but within the same database. To use this, we will have to create connections for each schema with the same database, username, password for both the connections, and this is enabled by default. We can use push-down optimization via the user-defined parameters. Like, let's say you want to control when and what type of PDO happens during what times of the day or night. So that is also possible. There is a user-defined, or there is a variable that is exposed, and you can set that variable value to source, target, or full. Right. This is when you have multiple coming to connections. This is applicable to when we have multiple database connection objects and only one of that acts as an active connection. This decides how much query or how much transformation logic we can push it down to. Right. The associated property will need to be enabled to use this. Error handling, this is something that needs to be noted. Some functionalities of data integration service are not available when we are using push-down optimization. Errors that occur during the session, the database needs to be able to handle the errors. The same thing with recovery options, right, and/or session failures. because the entire transformation logic is being pushed to the either to the source, target, or both. So that's for that. Able to see my screen, right? So a quick demonstration as to where and how push-down optimization can be used. This is a mapping task wherein my source is a Salesforce and my target is a SQL Server. And these options are available in mapping tasks. The partitions are available in mapping, so not to get confused there. So it's under Advanced Session Properties tab here. So we have these performance settings, and you can choose push-down optimization. At the moment, I have none as set. You can use source. This will enable the source push-down optimization. To target, this will be to the target. Full means full PDO. And this is the configuration that I was telling you earlier. You can use this parameters to switch from one type to another based on either the schedule type or whatever is the custom defined window that you want. So that's that. So moving on. Okay. So data transformation managers properties. DTM is a process that gets associated with every task run, basically. This manages the execution of those tasks. One of those manages is the memory that it allocates for every session that it needs to run, and it is divided into buffer blocks and buffer block sizes and etc. These will you can configure these in mapping tasks. Buffer size specifies the amount of memory that is allocated to the task from the DTM process. There are two options that we can set this to. The primary being auto, and this is the default setting. And the second one is a numeric value, wherein you can specify the numeric value that is shown in the screenshot. When you define auto, you would also need to specify the maximum allowed settings also, so that it doesn't blow up the disk space available, right? And these are the size configurations. By default, DTM buffer size is 12 MB for each task. But if there is more character data in the given task associated, you can increase it to 24 MB and thereafter increase in tuples. Goes without saying, if the mapping task has a number of partitions, you'll have to multiply the buffer size by n. That way the mapping doesn't fail. Large binary objects, the precision, you have to consider all the precisions, the the maximum lengths of the record set that you're expecting, and then calculate based on this. The exact formulas and calculations, you can contact GCS to get these sorted, especially if you want to specify the size of it, right? That's the end of the session. I may have gone a little fast on few of the sections. Let me show you where this DTM things are also in place. So right in the same mapping task, the DTM buffer size is here. You can specify the number or auto. You don't need to actually specify auto here if you want to use auto, because that's the default that is managed at the data integration service level. This can be used where you want to specify the actual MBs and KBs that you want the task to be associated with. So that's it for the session. Q&As, you can open the floor.
So Raghavendra, we have quite a few queries that are there in the Q&A section. Would you like to take that up?
Yes, please. Yeah.
there's a question. For key range partitioning, does the data needs to be sorted based on the key? And if not sorted, how does IIS perform?
If it is performed great, because that's one of the guidelines that it has. If it doesn't, inherently the sorter performs it. Yeah.
Another question from Vamshi Manava.
Mhm.
Is it mandatory to sort the data to enable key range partition?
Not mandatory, just best practice.
Christopher Furnell asked this question. The partition is like power center or data quality, example NM, not necessary to have the same number of partitions between the source and target.
Right. Here at the moment, the partitioning is completely driven from the source. So the target partitioning doesn't come into the picture. Hope that answers the question in comparison with Power Center and ICS.
The next question is from an anonymous attendee. Can we use source tables where partitions have been defined in the base side, and how to leverage partitions using parameter files?
Parameter files, we cannot pass the parameter itself as one of the partitions. If the database itself is doing, we don't have a use case for this yet. How we can leverage the database with the IICS. However, if both of them are same, I'm pretty sure it will add value to it. In the sense, let's say you're using a key range partitioning based on billing dates or some kind of date in your table, and you're using the same or same as a partition key within Informatica, that should definitely help.
Next question is from Sirish Kamal, and he would like to like you would show the source partitioning tab for key range partition.
Yes. Okay. Uh, So when we click on the source, you can see the partitions on the last or last end of the left side under the properties menu. So this is the partition key. Yeah. Right.
Then the next question is from Benjamin Arokesami. What are the prerequisites for PDO from transformation perspective, and what all transformation are not supported?
There's the documentation per se doesn't say which transformations are not supported, especially for PDO standpoint. If it encounters or where it encounters, it cannot push the logic down to the database or to either source or target. The task carries on processing the transformation logic.
Okay. The next question, using string-based partition key, can I give in a list, for example, state code in CA, TX?
On top of my head, that should be possible, but I've got to check with that and come back to you, Benjamin. Can you make a note of it?
Yes. And the next question, update target table using target video. Is it row-wise or bulk?
Mm. We will get back to you on this question, but the PDO itself goes to the database, so it should be bulk. But I will get the confirmation back from the PM team on this. Can you mark the questions?
Yes, I will mark that question.
Okay.
Another question from Benjamin Arokesami.
Mhm.
How was the operational starts of execution connected using PDO? In PC PDO, execution starts show rows loaded as one. For full PDO execution, is it the same in IICS?
The behavior ought to be same. Again, this is something that we need to get clarity on from the PM team. Yes.
Next question is from Elias Jamal Khan. He has two questions here. First one, understand that this partitioning is at mapping level. How can we use its option mapping pass level instead of mapping level?
No, we cannot, and there is no parameterization option also. So that's question number one.
Yeah. The second question goes like this. Pushdown SQL uses a lot of subqueries for each column. This makes pushdown SQL runs for multiple pages of SQL. How can this SQL be simplified?
This is more of a product enhancement or a product behavior change. We can contact GCS to raise as a product enhancement or a product change request, and that will flow through if picked up.
The next question, Samir Brahmbhatt, where can I find the recording of the session? This will be posted in the success portal. Next question is from Reza Maziat. Does auto setting for DTM also work in partition tasks?
Yes. Simple answer. Yes.
Next question is an anonymous attendee. We have DTM calculator inbuilt in the tool.
I think do we maybe. If it is, do we have DTM calculator inbuilt in the tool? At the moment, no. Right.
Okay. Next question is from Ramesh Kumarsi. Which option is best, auto or value?
So if you for sure know this is the maximum amount of length that you're going to get in terms of precisions from both sources and targets, you have ironed out that bit. Value is slightly better, but if you don't know that, which is often the case, and it moves per day to day or from record to record, auto will always be your best bet, right?
Okay. The next question again from Benjamin Arokesami. How is the performance difference between using PDO for redshift source or target based mapping at scale mapping with redshift source target?
At scale, I don't think is supported, but for the benchmarks that can be shared with external, we will have to contact the PM team. I will get back to you on the benchmarks if we can share it for external teams on specifically with redshift source and targets. Yeah.
Another question from Ramesh Kumasi. Which option is best for DTM?
That's answer. Auto or value. Yeah.
Okay. Next question, Mallesh Deshare asked, does IICS support pushdown to Hadoop cluster?
No, we will have to get back to you on this question as well.
We will note this question.
Yeah.
Next question by Habib Mohammed. Do number of partitions in BDM dictate number of map reduced jobs running on Hadoop cluster?
All the Hadoop questions, we will have to come back after checking with Hadoop internal teams also as to what the interconnectivity and compatibility between the two are. Yeah.
All right. Next question from Brent Black. Does this work in BDM or only the cloud product?
So the one that we demonstrated, it's only for the cloud product. BDM is not yet on the cloud at the moment. It's still on-prem. Yeah.
Next question from Venkata. Enable cross-schema pushdown or optimization. Is it only available for cloud offering or is it present in PowerCenter on-prem too?
On-prem, I'm not sure, but cloud definitely that is the default option. On the on-prem, we will have to check either the product documentation or the general guides.
Next question from Reza Maziat. Can we download the PPT for this? Yes, you can. You'll get to view the video for this webinar in Success Portal and in YouTube as well. We'll be sharing the link once the webinar is done. Then, next question from Benjamin. What is the real-time use case of PDO config parameter? Is it possible to pass different PDO configuration for different pipeline within a same mapping?
So, Benjamin, there is no different pipelines in IICS mapping as of now. You cannot have multiple mappings within the same mapping. I mean, the target load order is not supported yet, and all those things. So you cannot particularly have two mappings within the single mapping, one above the other. So when we talk about the real-time use case, right? So the options are given. So let's say when you, if you want to do PDO only at night or full PDO only at night, that is one thing that you can do as part of your batch process. And during the day job runs, if you don't want to um, resource intensive or run resource intensive PDO queries on either your source or your targets, then you can probably use the usual transformation logic with no PDO, or slightly on the source or on the target, depending on which is your analytical system there. Right?
Next question from Christopher. Can we partitioning only one transformation, or we must add the same number of partitions for all assets?
The partitioning is not done at the transformation level. So it's done at the source. So respectively, so that takes effect throughout the mapping, not just at one particular transformation level. So what it means is at source, let's say I have 3 partition key ranges here. The effect of it is the entire pipeline gets divided by 3, right? So let's say if you have 1 million transactions ranging in these 3 partition keys, those will, in an ideal scenario or a theoretical scenario, will get divided by 3.
The next question, does Power Center support...
Sorry, can you come a little closer to the mic, please? A bit louder for the questions.
One sec. Is it me or is
No,
it?
Brinda, can she come closer? Yeah, just the question bit. Raghavendra, you're clear.
Okay. She won. Questions are not clear.
The next question, does Power Center support database partitioning in Informatica when we use source and target database as Microsoft SQL Server?
Again, this the today's presentation is more on cloud partitioning. The question is pertaining to on-prem Power Center. Yeah.
Can partitioning and pushdown be combined?
Yes, there is nothing of specifically saying it cannot be used together. We can use together, right?
I guess we have answered most of the questions.
Oh, so any further queries from the members or the participants?
If there are no queries, I've just posted the feedback survey link in the chat window. It will be great if you all can share your feedback, the participants, and any recommendation for future topics. So we did make a note for, a similar topic, similar presentation for CAI. But in addition, if you have any other recommendations, as well as your feedback, please share it in the survey link shared in the chat window. Please feel free to ask any other question. We have time in case there are any other questions. We have another question, Raghavendra.
Okay. Where can I see the questions? Oh, Q&A.
So one question is, where is the documentation on which endpoints are supported for PDO? I hope you can hear me, Raghavendra.
I can. What do you mean by endpoints? Any clarity on that? Are we still
Uh,
talking about CAI or CDI?
Actually, this is the question. I'm just reading it out. This is a question from Elias.
We've got a follow-up response. It's cloud endpoints such as Azure Data Warehouse for Target, support partitioning, and PDO.
Okay. Repeating of the question, is the question related to when are these Azure endpoints supported by PDO? Is that the question?
Yes, yes.
Right. Okay. So for those specific connector levels, we will have to check the connector guides for specific connector types. Yeah. And also to note, partitioning is not supported across the board for all connectors. So we will have to check the guide for which connector we are using and what are all the features that are supported by it, whether it's partitioning, PDO, DTM is generic one, so that is supported irrespective. So the two, we'll need to check the documentation for the connector guide that is of interest.
So we have another question from an anonymous attendee, which is when can we expect parameterization usage support?
I do not have any idea on this. Again, the product management team will have to comment on this, even if this is something that is in their horizon or not. I'll post this query and to the PM team and try to get a response and post it back to you, Elias. The next question is from Elias. I hope I am audible. Some of the data type conversions doesn't seem to work in PDO. Example, date time in SQL Server to date time to Teradata, or loading character data to numeric. Is there any documentation available on unsupported data type conversions? Um, we will check and come back to you on the actual documentation and associated links with it.
There's another question from Krishnamurthy Dhanapal. He's posted this on the chat window.
Right.
Mass ingestion, can we use the PDO?
That is for file sources. Not really. No, the uh, video is only for mapping tasks. I thought. Right. Yep, video is only for mapping tasks. So mass ingestion is currently not going to be supported at the moment.
Right. So we have another question from Tapabrata Sarkar. How then aggregator transformation supports with key range?
The key range should be your group by. That's the inference that I get. Yeah, is that where you're going with the aggregator transformation and the support for partitioning?
Yeah, he said that PDO is mainly working for DB, not file.
Yes, because it is for database sources and database targets, not for files. Right?
Okay.
Because so the idea here is the transformation logic that you have defined in your mapping, that gets converted either completely or partially to how much ever Informatica can do utilizing this PDO option, it gets converted into a SQL query. So that means only databases are supported at the moment for push-down optimization. Hope that answers the query. Right.
The next question from Bert Peters. If you partition a flat file source, is the aggregator supported?
I have not tried this option myself, but it should be supported. It doesn't say anything otherwise. Repeat.
The next question from an anonymous. For full PDO, if some mappings have source fields not propagated, the job fields with some bound field errors in Power Center, for which we have been given an exclusive ADF to get that fixed. Can we expect that will not be the issue using Cloudera?
So anytime there are new or changes to the fields, either from the source or within the pipeline or to the target objects, those will need to be taken care of. Otherwise, the mapping will expect those fields to be available. In turn, the same thing happens with the PDO. So with IICS in particular, no comments on Power Center at this point in time. So with cloud, you can have this synchronize option. It's available in almost all transformations, and you can use that to quickly synchronize either with the source or the target and or the transformation pipeline. That should be done, right? Otherwise, you will get those bound errors or not able to bind errors. Right? That is answer. Any more questions?
The next question is from Bert Peters. If you partition a flat file source, is the aggregator supported?
Yeah, I thought I answered this question. There is nothing that says otherwise in the documentation. I have not tried it myself, but it should be supported because it doesn't say in the documentation.
Next question from Vamshi. Does PDO cause any issues at DB level if we use query hints in SQL?
These hints, if we are referring to in the I hope so long as we are not referring to these hints in the mapping via the SQL queries and custom SQL queries and relationships, it should not impact, but this is something more subject specific. I will have to get a confirmation from the PM team. Yeah.
There is one question from the chat window. I'm not sure if this has been answered already, but the question is, how different will be partitions from at-scale or elastic mappings? When to use partition at scale?
Okay. Partitioning is not supported in at-scale mappings. I might be wrong here, considering it's a new feature. I will have to come back to you on this specific support itself on partitioning and at-scale mappings. As to when to use at-scale versus when to use partitions, it all depends on the use case and how the partitioning is performing, if it is indeed supporting it, versus the usual at-scale mapping that you may have in your environment. So that's the first part of the question is subjective. The later part as to actual support itself, I will have to come back.
There's another question from Benjamin. What are the prerequisites for PDO from a transformation perspective? What all transformations are not supported?
This was answered. So far as PDO and transformation support and compatibility aspect is concerned, there is no specific transformation is supported versus not supported. So it will analyze the mapping or the mapping task, either from source to target or from target to source, and decides how much of it can be pushed to either source or to target database, and the remaining things which it cannot push to the databases, it will process as is, in the sense as if there is no PDO implemented. Those not compatible transformation logic. Here the insisting or the relevance is on transformation logic as opposed to the transformations themselves.
There's another question from Shanmugan, and that is, does volume play a role in PDO or for every run, or can it be pushed like for every run?
Large volumes will definitely see improvement. Where the difference is when the volume is small, let's say on a given day you have no transactions to process, what would be the PDO impact if there is anything negative that we have seen in partitioning? That hasn't been observed yet. So there is no proof to date whether this negatively impacts it or not. But for partitions, it will definitely impact negatively if you have a very low volume of data and you're using higher number of partitions, right?
There's another question from Benjamin. How is the performance difference between AtScale and PDO?
Again, these are comparison metrics between the two features. I will reach out to the respective product management team to see if those internal benchmarks can be exposed to the external teams, and if so, to what extent. Yeah, leave the question out.
Okay. There's another question from Tapabrata. Apart from range partition, do we have any other type of partitioning in IICS like PC?
Right. So at the moment, it's only two. It's not exhaustive as Power Center. So one is key range. The other one is we actually specifying the number of partitions that we want in a given pipeline. So those are the only two partitions that are available at the moment.
So another question from Krishnamurti. With Snowflake, the PDO, do you have any benchmark on performance? Is there any administrator setting to improve the PDO?
So the performance benchmarks itself, again, as stated for other questionnaires, we will have to see if those internal benchmarks can be shared. So we will take this question back and see what can be done on this.
Yeah. I think there are no more questions on chat.
There are a couple of new questions in the Q&A section towards the end.
Okay.
Yeah,
That is done.
From Vamshi, which memory does PDO cache consume? Agent RAM, agent disk, source, or target connection server?
So this, I'm assuming when the PDO actually, I mean, during analysis, it will use the secure agent. But once the analysis is done, wherever it, or whichever type you choose, that is the system that is just going to hit.
Another question from Christopher. Can we use the partitioning even if the table is is not partitioning in the database?
Yes. At that scenario, it will become logical partition.
Next question by Shanmugam. Are these features based on the particular or latest product of Informatica, and which version is this?
This is for cloud. Don't think there is any version to cloud. Cloud CDI microservice. If the question pertains to licensing, you may have to get in touch with the sales rep or the account manager and get it sorted, or to the CSM also involved with this account.
So just wanted to add one thing. I still see that some participants are asking if the recording and the presentation will be shared. So yes, the recording will be uploaded on our Infra Support YouTube channel as well as the Success portal, and we will also be emailing the recording link as well as the presentation deck to all the participants who registered for the webinar, irrespective of whether they could attend today or not. So you should be receiving all the resources, within a day or two. I believe we're getting some positive feedback over the chat windows. We really appreciate that you like this session. And please do use the survey option the feedback option to share your comments as well as suggestions for future topics. If there are no more questions, then we could end the session. So if you have, please post it in the Q&A in another minute or so. I guess there are no more questions then, right, team? Yeah, I think we can end this session. So thank you everyone for all the participants as well as Raghavendra for sharing the presentation as well as answering all questions. And thank you to the entire team. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.